Of
Really
course.
good point.
Good point.
Thanks for the tip.
Yeah. Oh, what fun. Just to get together and chat about Midsummer and whatever.
Great.
So it looks like we're redirecting to YouTube. I'll do some kind of intro thing. Oh, we're live. Okay. Welcome, everyone. This is the Shakespeare in Prisons Network discussion of A Midsummer Night's Dream prior to our reading of the play this Saturday at, let me get the time right. We have so many time zones and times, 2 p.m. Eastern time in the United States. And what time, Rob, is that in Australia?
That will be 4 a.m. Sunday.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yep.
Is that
So
what
the
we
sun
did?
will be rising just as the sun rises in the play.
Perfect. Lucky you.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Okay, and for us in Central time, which would be Lisa and I, it will be
1.
1 p.m.
Yeah.
Okay. And some of us might even venture out of doors for that production, but we must be careful of our Wi-Fi connections and also the ambient noise of leaf blowers and whatever else is out there. Okay.
Boats for me.
What's that?
I'm on the Milwaukee River, and as the
Boats.
boats are starting to come out, there will be potentially a lot of noise because
Oh.
people don't necessarily social distance on the river. They scream and drink.
Okay. I was just looking around my bizarre little room. Maybe we could just bring a few things in like this. You know? Okay.
I'll look for something pastoral to bring.
Right. So why don't we just begin by introducing ourselves and talking very, intro-like about our connections to Shakespeare, Midsummer Night's Dream, and prison work, which is quite a combination of things. I'll break the ice. I'll just say that I'm Jonathan Shailor, obviously a professor of communication at the University of Wisconsin Parkside, where I've been for quite some time. And back in, I guess it was 2004, I took the work that I was doing at a local prison, devised theater pretty much since the middle of the 90s, and decided to go Shakespeare. So we started off with a King Lear, but we eventually got around to A Midsummer Night's Dream, which was 2016, only 4 years ago. And it was a wonderful experience. I'll talk more about it as we get going, but I don't think I've ever loved that play more than when we did it in Racine Correctional Institution. And that's by way of saying that we have something ongoing here in Wisconsin called the Shakespeare Prison Project.
Oh, were you waiting for me? Sorry.
No. The Shakespeare Prison Project at Racine. It's a collaborative effort between the university and Racine Correctional Institution, a medium security facility for men in Sturtevant, Wisconsin. And we do a 9-month process, much like other, not all, but many other programs that follow a similar model. And we study the play, we talk about it, we rehearse it, we learn acting from square one often, and then we put on a show for the institution, for staff and for prisoners, and for family and friends of the actors. Right now, we're in a very interesting time with COVID, and maybe we can talk about that as well. We're on a hiatus for obvious reasons, and we're very concerned about what's going on in our prisons, the vulnerability of the populations there. So back to topic, my experience with A Midsummer Night's Dream began when I was a freshman in high school, and I played both Theseus and Oberon, which was quite a task for a youngster. And I was just so blown away by the elders in the production, the Puck and the who was it, the Titania, and how they schooled me regarding performance of Shakespeare. But that was, we all have these, right? These pivotal experiences where boom, what Shakespeare is and how it can affect us really hits us. And for me, it was that 1972 production. I'll embarrass myself by saying I've been reaching out to friends on Facebook who were a part of that production. Nobody has any photos. Nobody wants to talk about it. I'm all alone.
Oh,
But it means something to me. So I'll leave my intro there. We'll get going as we go on. So Rob, you're the next on my screen, so maybe you could go next.
Okay, yeah, my name's Rob Pencil Feeney. I'm the artistic director of the Queensland Shakespeare Ensemble, which is in, wait for it, Queensland, which is it is the northeastern part of Australia. I'm originally from Perth, which is over on the western side of Australia. I don't know why I'm pointing. But I've lived here in Brisbane for about 20 years, and the theatre company will be 19 this year. So in this country, it's old enough to drink. We have, since 2006, so about 14 years now, we have run a project in prisons as well. So we do a number of things. We do public professional performances, we do training. I'm a designated Linklater teacher, so a lot of our training is based in Linklater voice, but also more recently, we've incorporated Theatre of the Oppressed because I had a lot of wonderful opportunities to train with some very senior jokers. And we do community outreach work under the banner of what we call Shakespeare Beyond, which includes our Shakespeare Prison Project. We played with a number of different names for it, and in the end, we settled on Shakespeare Prison Project, and I wrote to Jonathan and said, Jonathan, do you mind? It's on the other side of the world. Do you mind if we use the same name? And Jonathan said, go for it. So, yeah, thank you.
You heard it here, folks. Yes.
Yeah, totally inspirational. Yeah. And we started that very innocently, no pun intended. We knew that there were other people around the world doing Shakespeare in prisons, but we were completely unaware of them and what they did and so forth. So I was very happy some 6-7 years later to connect with other practitioners. And our work, we started out in a men's prison, high security. We don't have medium maximum, we have high and low. So we work in high security, have been doing that in men's prisons for the last 2 years, in women's prisons as well, and for about the last 3 or 4 much shorter programs in our juvenile system. It's a very different system to that in the States. Well, it's similar in many ways and quite different in other ways, mainly to do with length of sentencing, as in we don't lock people up for quite as long as you guys do. And also in terms of mobility. So we have a lot of prisoner mobility between one prison and another. They don't stay in the same prison for very long. So our projects are necessarily shorter. We tried running one over 5 months and we ended up with no one at the end who was there at the beginning because they'd all moved or gotten parole or whatever. So we run over 3 and a bit months now and put on about an hour to an hour and a half version of a Shakespeare play each year. Within the prison project, we've done Midsummer Night's Dream once in the men's prison, and the women actually chose it this year, but we didn't get to start working on it yet because of COVID. So that's another story I might talk about later. As a professional company, we've done Midsummer Night's Dream once in 2013. I was dragged kicking and screaming into directing that because I always said, I hate this play. I can't stand this play.
Oh, no.
There's a story behind that, which I'm very happy to share as to why, because I realized why, and it wasn't the play that I hated. My company got me drunk and got me to agree to directing it. It ended up being our most decorated play, won more awards and got more nominations than any other production. And partly, I think, because in it, I got to wrestle with the things that I'd hated about it and fix them. Not changing the script. We don't really do that. Not much. Yeah, that's me.
What did you fix? I have to ask.
All right. So now we get into why I hate that play. What I realized was that I'd hated every production and interpretation I'd ever seen of it. So of the three worlds in the play, if we take Athens, the forest, the fairy world, and the mechanicals always work. Like, gotta love the mechanicals. Mechanicals are hilarious. They tell us a lot about ourselves. So I had no qualm with that. And in fact, we do a half-hour show called Midsummer's Mechanicals, which is just the mechanical scenes, the story of them rehearsing the play and then putting it on with the nobles taken out. So that's great. What a great story. The other two worlds never worked for me. And what I came to realize was, hey,
Rob.
what I came to realize was that what I'd always seen was the world of the nobles presented as very noble, as Athens, very rich and lots of columns and, you know, everyone beautifully dressed and doing this kind of shit. And as a result, the four lovers, I just couldn't stand them. I mean, most of Shakespeare's lovers are just intolerable anyway. But like, I still can't tell the two guys apart. And I can only tell the two women apart because one's tall, one's short. I could not care less what happened to them or to any of the nobles. And as for the fairy world, Disney fairies, you know, like wings and flitting around and all this kind of, ugh. And as I dug into the play, and I think it's textually supported, I found that those are not the worlds that are written at all. The fairies are, yes, mischievous, but they're kind of nasty. They're more like goblins. And so they're more like fairies with an E, you know, even though they're not written that way in the text. And so the first thing I said to our designer was, no wings. And then, you know, I also said, and I want them to have an extra joint on their fingers. So the poor designer had to create these gloves with an extra joint on the fingers so they, you know. And as for the nobles, as I read into the play, I went, this world is really harsh. They're post-war, right? They've just come out of a long war. This guy's dragged his war bride in. At the very beginning of the play, there's, you know, the threat of death. Like most Shakespeare comedies begin with death or the threat of death. And in this case, it's a guy who wants his daughter executed. It's a harsh, harsh world. No wonder they run away to the forest. And then I started caring about the lovers a little more. And I realized also that the forest is not a pretty place.
Right.
And, you know, I think with my, you know, hippie 20th, 21st century mentality that, oh, the forest, it's all natural. But in Shakespeare, the forest is a horrible, scary place. In all his plays where there's a forest, it's not a nice place to be. So to run away to the forest must mean the thing you're running away from is worse. So are these pictures? Oh, you can take pictures away.
Okay.
So, no, that's good. We'll talk about that later.
All right.
So those were the things I fixed. Was simply, and as I said, I believe that those are textually supported, was to kind of reimagine. And so we ended up with this very post-apocalyptic punk kind of Athens and a goblin-like Celtic forest. And in fact, the music we used, because we always have live music played by the actors in our show, and it was very strongly influenced by Celtic folk.
Oh, now that maybe we could go on a bit more with this because I finally figured out where your photos are. And,
right.
Let's see if I can get them up here. Oh, come on. Really? One moment. So we were just looking at this, but
those are photos from our first prison production of Midsummer. So there we obviously have
coming back.
You're right. So for a start, when we're not allowed to show photos in which prisoners are identifiable, that's why the prisoners are all blurry. So yeah, so we're actually prohibited from identifying prisoners in photos. That's a much more traditional approach. That's actually from our professional production. So that's our actors. Those are our mechanicals.
Mm.
And I think, yeah, that's Puck.
Okay.
I love it.
There we go.
Yeah. So she got an award for that role, for her performance in that role, which was well deserved. That's two of our lovers, Demetrius and Helena. So you can kind of see this kind of almost Mad Max aesthetic in the costumes there. So it's a cross between Elizabethan and post-apocalyptic. That's them in the forest. Those are our fairies. So you see that they're sitting on sort of industrial mushrooms. So Titania up on top there, and some of her fairies around. So that was, and this is the outdoor space that we've been working in for about 13 years now. Do a show there every year in the spring, our spring. That's the lovers again. The short one, what's her name? Hermia. And I think that's Lysander there. As I said, I can't tell them apart. And Oberon's kind of lurking in the background.
Is there another one? Yes.
Yeah, so that's Theseus and Hippolyta. And they also played, you know, they doubled as the fairy king and queen, as is often done. Philostrate.
Wow.
Oops, he disappeared.
I made Philostrate disappear. So my designer was so good to me, because I went to her with these crazy ideas, like, and I just said, for Philostrate, I want him in a Hannibal Lecter mask with a chain that goes to his nipple. And that's what she gave me. Why? Could not tell you, really. It just seemed to fit, but that's that whole Athenian world there.
Oh, my.
It looks like that Hippolyta from that 2016 film.
Okay.
I don't think I've seen it.
Yeah, when she gets wheeled in the first scene, she's on the board, like how Lecter was strapped to the board with that mask
right
on her face. And Theseus does all of his speeches, and then they come over to her and they take the mask off, but they hold a script up on an iPad.
Right.
And so her first lines are just what she's forced to say, and then they put the gag back on her and wheel her out.
So that sounds very much like the kind of thing we were going for. Oh, well, obvious wall. It's got a brick on his head. Yeah.
We love Wall. Who's that?
Helena.
Nice.
Rebecca there is has been working with the company longer than anyone else in the company. She's our general manager, and really she's also my voice of reason. So whenever we disagree about anything within the company, whether it's artistic or business wise, it's because she's right. So yeah, she's one of the best actors and most sane people I've ever worked with.
I think that's the end of the scroll. So great. Thank you so much. So much to talk about. How about you, Lisa?
Hi, I'm Lisa Kornetsky, and Christopher, I think we met at one of the shows at RCI when you were there. Yes.
Oh, fantastic.
Probably 4 or 5 years ago now. I can't remember.
Do you remember which show it was?
I can't remember, but I remember there was the issue of your ring.
Oh, the infamous ring year.
Merchant of Venice.
Merchant of Venice. Rings. Okay. Yes. So I'm sorry that I brought that up again. That probably.
It's a little traumatic. Rob, just to.
It was traumatic for me too that you had to go in.
So it's a long story behind it. We're serious about rings in our family. My father always was. And my wife had put this ring on my hand 30 years, has never come off my body. And every year, the 4 years previous, the guards were always really nice and let me just put my hand on top of my head as I went through. And this guy just wanted to bust my cojones that day. And he said, you don't take the ring off, you don't go in.
Whoa.
I begged him. I was in tears. I begged him. I told him the story. I said, please, please don't make me take this off. And then John said, it's up to you, bro, whatever you need to do. And then I had an epiphany and I thought about the ring in the play and just references to it. And what was more important was to go in there and do something for the men. And I knew my wife would understand. And we had a beautiful little re-ring ceremony. So it all ended up great, Lisa, but thank you.
Well, that's good. I thought about that this year, every time I go into the prison, because they've never made me take my wedding ring off. So it seemed so capricious that they did that.
Oh, it was. I think it was because I didn't buy the guard's hot sauce or something. I don't know. Whatever it was. He was selling something under the counter. But now we get to act, but now we get to perform together, Lisa.
We do. Indeed, we do.
You do. My wonderful.
Yes, good to see you again. So I'm Lisa Kornetsky. I am a professor emeritus from the University of Wisconsin Parkside in theater arts. I retired, I don't know, a year and a half ago, maybe. Seems like a long time ago. And I retired, as Jonathan well knows, because my father was quite ill. And I mean, that was part of the reason that I retired. I really wanted to spend time with him at the end of his life. And he was living in Boston while I was in Wisconsin. And then I dealt with, the grieving process. So my first year of retirement, I didn't really do anything creative. And then this last year, I have started to get back involved in theater just in time to have every project I have canceled because of COVID. But prior to that, I grew up in Massachusetts. I did my MFA at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, where Jonathan also went as an undergraduate, right? Oh, and you did as well. So I was in the theater arts department there, and my thesis production happened to be A Midsummer Night's Dream. And I can very much relate to a lot of what you're saying, Rob, because some of my reason for doing the play was also really wanting to explore the dark side of the play, which I find really fascinating. And I agree with you. I think that's really supported in lots of ways. I was particularly interested in all of the issues around illusion and reality and who's pulling the strings and rational people who think they're rational and can control the world versus these darker forces, which we see in many different ways. So I did that play in, gosh, it was 1985, long time ago, and loved that production, loved that performance. Felt that I made a lot of mistakes, learned from them, and then went on to teach for 30 something years. So my work has primarily been as a director, and primarily with undergraduate students, which is what I always wanted to do and always loved. Since I've retired, I've been doing more community theater and have some work through a small professional theater in Milwaukee, which I hope will happen again. And then I've had the good fortune to be able to come in every year or so to a rehearsal or to do a workshop with the Racine project, the prison project in Racine, which has always been really meaningful. And this year I came in as kind of a assistant director role, I guess we call it, to work with the project, and found it to be truly an amazing, amazing experience. And I hope we will get to kind of talk about what's happened with COVID, because as you and I discussed, Jonathan, I have felt this real sense of grief for being removed from that project at this point and not being able to interact at all or to know what's happening with these men who were most of them so gracious in sharing so much of their lives with us over this last year. That's probably enough for now.
Thank you, Lisa. And my brother, Christopher Shailor, who has other claims to fame. Hello?
No,
you're
Chris,
on
we
mute.
can't hear you.
Unmute thyself. Is he there?
Yes, I'm the one that usually tells people that. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
The little red thing wasn't there warning me. I'm sorry.
Oh.
So I was starting to say, I also went to UMass. I wasn't a theater major, but I managed to get most of the theater department mad at me because I kept auditioning and getting cast in plays. So all the majors were always upset with me. So yeah, I've been following in Jonathan's footsteps since we were in high school, and I sat in the auditorium and watched him on stage, watched him in Midsummer playing the double role of Theseus and Oberon. I think he just flipped a cape and changed a
Yes.
crown or something.
Black on one side, red on the other.
And now fast forward 40 years, I ended up, after zillions of adventures, mostly playing music, becoming a theater teacher, back at that same school and directing kids. So I'm retiring next year, and I'm afraid I'll never get to direct any of my kids ever again. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Doing that, my summer Shakespeare theater that Jonathan and Michael, who will be speaking in a moment, if we're in the same gallery view, I'm pointing into his Brady Bunch
here.
And we did Midsummer. Mike played. I'm loving this talk of the dark fairies. I won't go deep into all my comments, but that very much informed us too. I had the same thing, struggling with people. One of the things we came up with is the first time Oberon and Titania crossed paths. Yeah, that was our little poster. That was my youngest daughter. I just had her put on her little fairy costume. She played the changeling child, and that's her wandering through the bushes of the theater. But we opened it with when Oberon and Titania first faced up, they had an extended quarterstaff fight that Titania actually ended up winning. I mean, she just, he called it, and then they went on with the dialogue about the kid. Mike was one of my little dark fairies. He was one of Oberon's. So yeah, we'll probably keep talking about that stuff. But and then Jonathan played Prospero for me. He played the friar to Michael's Romeo, and so many good stories that we won't
just please. I have to say about. I'm sorry to overlap, but I just wanted to say,
or I'll never stop.
Okay, so I just wanted to say Christopher has been a part of the Shakespeare Prison Project at Racine Correctional Institution in Wisconsin since the beginning. He has come in during the final week usually and done workshops and filmed and played and inspired and appreciated. And it's kind of like that kind of family reunion feeling then again at the end of every year, knowing Chris is coming, do this for Chris kind of thing. And I really appreciate
that's really sweet and wonderful to say.
Support. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's been amazing for me the whole time to be able to be part of it.
So now we have Michael Obremski. Who the heck is this?
I don't know.
Hello, I'm Michael Obremski. Don't let the last name fool you. I am very much a Shailor. So, I was introduced to Shakespeare almost entirely by John and Chris when I was a kid. These are my uncles, my mom's brothers, and I grew up watching my Uncle Chris's shows at the high school and his more kids-oriented shows at Burnham Hall. And then by the time I got into middle school, he started giving me these little one-liners in his plays. And then when Sleepy Lion, his outdoor Shakespeare theater company that operated on a farm in Topsfield, Massachusetts, when that really got going, then he started fitting me into, all the lovers. I played Romeo for him, Ferdinand, all those guys. And when I was Romeo, John was my friar. And when I was Ferdinand, he was Prospero. So really Shakespeare is kind of a family industry almost for us. And, like I said, I was raised on Shakespeare by these guys. So by the time I got to college and everything, I was full blown, into theater, and I was acting, and I was a theater major. And then after that, that was at Brown University. And then I stumbled into their MFA program. I got my MFA there. I went to New York after that. That was a lot harder than I thought it would be. I came back to Boston and I've done some little things here and there, mostly community theater type stuff, you know, the off Broadway of Boston, if you will. But mostly I've just been working like a regular 9 to 5 and enjoying an income and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, you know, we did do Midsummer Night's Dream at Sleepy Lion when I was a kid, and I was one of the fairies, and he referenced me being Oberon's fairy. One of the coolest parts of that show was the physicality of the fairies in that show. Wherever Oberon went in that show, the fairies that were in the Oberon contingent would sort of, you know, trail him and whisper around him. And when he wanted to sit down, the fairies would just form a physical throne beneath and around him, and he would just sit into it. And it was cool stuff like that. I mean, there was great tech, you know, Jake DeGroot, he was doing a fantastic job, but so much of the outdoor Shakespeare stuff was just what we could do with our bodies, you know, what we had available, you know, to our own instruments. So that was pretty cool. But, you know, I love you guys, John and Chris. And again, like, you guys raised me on Shakespeare. So
we may get into more of this later, but so Michael Obremski mentioned that he got typecast as the lover. Guess who he's playing in this production on Saturday?
Yeah, I did. I got quite typecast as the lover. And actually, by the time I got to grad school, it was a real thorn and sticking point for me, because, you know, there were 17 of us in our class, and, you know, they curated that group of people very carefully. There were types, you know, and there was very little overlap, and everybody kind of had their role. And I was the straight leading man, and I just wanted to play a clown. I just wanted to be a bad guy. I just wanted to dress up in drag. Just give me something fun to do, you know?
So that's why when I saw you in Hedvig, why you went so crazy, you were bleeding on your guitar.
Oh,
you were just
well,
getting it all out in one performance.
That was like a absolutely out of the box, transcendent, you know, moment. Cause yeah, you know, I mean, don't let this long hair fool you when I'm all clean cut and everything.
Oh yeah, he's Mr. Brad Pitt. He is.
It's very leading man.
At least in this production on Saturday, you get to play the bad boy lover.
True, it's the bad boy lover. Although I've been looking at the, you know, that is all, you know, it's interesting. I've been looking at the lines. I have some more reflections on that.
I think Rob's going to have a few good things for you, Mike, when we were talking before you came. I think Rob will help you find more darkness, I promise.
Oh dear. Okay. So
well, I think at this late stage in my middle, you know, early middle ages, I think I can tap into having scorned a lover or two.
Okay. So you can work with that.
Yeah.
We have Steve Rowland joining us.
Hey, Steve.
From Evergreen State College, a wonderful documentary filmmaker. Would you know, not everybody knows you because you're kind of a quiet guy. So would you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, Steve?
Yeah, I'll be happy to. So I had a long career making music documentaries for NPR, for like radio documentaries about great musicians: Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Leonard Bernstein, Frank Zappa, George Clinton. I tried to make a wide variety of different music choices, some of which were not met too warmly by the public radio community. Even when I did a documentary on Santana, they didn't want to hear that because we don't play Santana music on public radio. What are you giving us this crap for? That's commercial rock and roll. And I said, that's not commercial rock and roll.
I loved your Todd Rundgren one.
I didn't do that one yet. But but anyway, I did that, and then about I finished one on Leonard Bernstein, and then I decided I was going to stop being in public radio. I couldn't take it anymore, and I was going through my divorce, and one afternoon I took myself down to the movie theater in Philadelphia to see Jeremy Irons and Al Pacino's Merchant of Venice. And it blew me away. And I came out of the theater and sat in the car, and I couldn't, my hands were shaking. I couldn't drive the car. Like literally, it was not, wouldn't have been safe for me to drive because I was vibrating from all of this energy that was coming from Shakespeare and the filmmakers and the musicians and Al Pacino and Jeremy Irons. And I said, oh shit, I got to make a radio documentary about Shakespeare. And I got to try to translate why Shakespeare is so powerful to contemporary people. And I just got this idea, and I was not really prepared for this. I had just done my background was really more in jazz and other forms of Black American music. So when I went into Bernstein, that was a little bit of a, even my mom called me up. She said, oh, I don't think you should do that thing on Leonard Bernstein. You don't know enough about that kind of music. And that one came out pretty good. And
Susan Sarandon narrated that, is that correct?
Susan Sarandon narrated. Yeah, it's 11 hours. It's 11 one-hour programs. And it was a huge hit on public radio. It was the most listened to special in the history of public radio, and won a Peabody Award. It was good. And it defied, what I liked about it, I'm not saying that bragging, I'm just saying that because it defied all of the advice that I got. Everybody told me, it's not going to work. It's too long. How could you make something so long? 11 hours, nobody will listen to it. People don't listen to documentaries anymore. They want to hear everything short. They don't want complicated production. They want it like two people chatting on a podcast.
So
So
could
anyway,
you tell, go ahead, you're on a roll. I'm thinking about next steps. You do it though.
Well, so then I started on the Shakespeare
Yeah.
thing. And I got a grant from the CPB to start doing, I was planning to do a 13-hour production on Shakespeare. And the idea was to interview all kinds of people from all over the country and maybe further who were involved in Shakespeare teachers, Shakespeare writers, Shakespeare actors. And I started traveling around and went to Oregon Shakespeare Festival. I went up to Vancouver. I went to Toronto. I went to the Public Theater in New York. And the thing that struck me, I remember I called Barry Edelstein after I had interviewed him, because the thing that struck me was that there was this incredible, so how can I explain this? The thing that I was always trying to share with people about music, about particularly John Coltrane and Leonard Bernstein, and Miles Davis too, is that they have a connection to the universal vibration. And that was my whole message, is that music is a channel into the universal vibration that brings all people together and all of us in connection with life and everything else and the origin of the universe. So that was what hit me. That's why I couldn't drive the car when I came out of the Merchant of Venice, because I realized that Shakespeare was doing the same thing exactly, but with words, which made it even more profound for documentary type work and for radio work. So I started embarking on that. And then I started traveling around doing all these interviews. And then I found that all these people that I talked to all had this incredible modern, contemporary, progressive bent that wanted to do the same thing. They wanted to open people's hearts and open people's minds. And it was like incredible. And I remember calling Barry and talking to him about it. And I said, yeah, this is what the documentary should be about. Then I had like a whole bunch of funding problems. And I got turned down for a whole bunch of grants in a row. And I couldn't get money. And then the Corporation for Public Broadcasting pulled out of the project. And it was a kind of a long story, but it was very disappointing. But then I was sitting with, I have 200 interviews that I did. The first half were all on audio and the second half were on video and audio. And I still haven't figured out exactly what to do with them all. And then two things happened. One was I went with, do you guys know Erin Arbus, the director in New York? She's the theater director at Theater for a New Audience in New York. and she was working teaching Shakespeare in a prison in New York. And I read a New York Times article about her, so I went in to the prison with her. This was in 2010, and I was just completely mesmerized and completely blown away, because the first thing was I hadn't spent too much time in prisons before. I had been in prisons a long time before that, but the guys that she was teaching were so incredibly smart and so incredibly engaged and so incredibly human. And one of the guys who was a Black Panther, he was in jail because he was a Black Panther as a teenager. He had, believe it or not, his story is unbelievable. His story is that he grew up in the South Bronx and he had perfect SAT scores. And he was getting recruited by Harvard. And he was also a political activist and joined the Black Panthers. And he was in an apartment in New York that got broken into by the cops who came in shooting. And he shot a cop in self-defense. The cop shot him and shot him, and then he shot a cop in the leg. And then he got convicted of attempted assassination of a police officer and given a 30-year to life prison sentence. And he's been in jail for 40 years now, 35, I think. And they won't let him out because they consider him a danger to society.
Mm-hmm.
And when I asked him about studying Shakespeare, he became a Muslim in prison. And when I asked him to, well, what do the other guys in prison think about you studying Shakespeare? And he said, well, that happened recently. I was in the yard and a whole bunch of the Muslim brothers came up to me and they surrounded me and they all pressed in and pushed me up against the back of the wall. And they said, we want you to stop fucking with that Shakespeare shit. That's the white man's poison. We don't think you should do it. And I said, wow. I said, what would you say? And he said, I said, get the fuck out of my way. Shakespeare is my link to humanity and I'm never giving it up. And I was so, like, that moment when he told me that, it was like so all these things clicked for me. Like, oh shit, this is like, this has to mean something, that people can be reached in this way. So that's when I started coming up with this idea for this film that I'm working on, which is about those guys studying Shakespeare.
And what's the name of that film?
Well, the working title is Time Out of Joint,
Mm-hmm.
Teaching Shakespeare in Prison.
Mm-hmm.
And it really should be learning Shakespeare in prison, because it's not really about teaching. It's really about learning Shakespeare, but it's not performance. The class, I taught a class. What I did was I was at the Globe to Globe Festival. You guys know about that?
Yes. Is that the one where they produced all of the plays in different languages?
Yeah.
Different world languages.
Yeah. All 37. It was one summer of 2012, right before the Olympics in London. And the Globe did this incredible thing where they worked on it for a year and a half, I think, in advance. And they commissioned each play to be done in a different language from a different country. And every night was a different play for 6 weeks. And logistically, it was mind blowing. So I talked myself into being the interviewer for the whole festival.
Mm-hmm.
So I shot video interviews with every director and every main actor from all 37 productions.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was done, I went back to the prison and I said, hey, why don't I bring in the Nigerian production of Winter's Tale, which is in Yoruba language, and the Mexican production of Henry IV, Part 1 in Spanish, and the hip hop production of Othello from Chicago, as a way to talk to these prisoners that Shakespeare is not only for white people, it's for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And then I set up this workshop and we spent 5 days looking at those films and talking about them. And then I had more funding problems, so I couldn't finish the film, and then I put it aside. And then I'm almost done. Then I came up with another idea, which was an idea called Shakespeare Central,
Mm-hmm.
that I started to work on with Dominic Dromgoole at the Globe.
Oh.
And the idea of Shakespeare Central was to figure out a way to organize Shakespeare-related media. So films of plays, like like Hollywood films, but then videotapes of plays, like the thing that did you guys see the 12th Night video from National Theater?
Yes.
That was on this week. That was cool.
Hmm.
So like videotapes of live plays, which don't really exist in the United States because the Actors Union won't let them be made. But they're happening in London and Canada. And then interviews and lessons. And there's so much Shakespeare media and it's not collected anyplace.
Hmm.
Situation.
So I thought, I worked on this idea for 5 years. And I thought it was going to happen. I thought with Dominic's participation that it was going to happen, that we were going to be able to get some money and launch this thing. And I have a prototype website. You can look at it, shakespearecentral.com. And there's an interesting story, which is that Dominic called me one day and he said that he was very excited because he got the people from Bloomsbury publishers
Mm-hmm.
who have what's their Arden Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
He got them interested, and they were really interested. So one small idea of Shakespeare Central was to have a calendar, like an online calendar. So if you were traveling around and you were going to go to London in July, that you should be able to look up and find out all the Shakespeare productions, big ones at the RSC, but little ones on the Dunbar Warehouse or whatever, and be able to get your tickets and it could be done all over the world. So that was one little idea. That was just like a small thing that I knew could be done, and it still hasn't been done, so I don't understand that.
Hmm.
But they wanted to do it for 2016, for the Shakespeare 2016 thing.
Sure.
400th. So that's why they got interested. And it was a very interesting dynamic because I said to Dominic, I don't think they're going to be a good partner for this. And he said, why not? And I said, because they're not invested in media. They sell books. And I don't know why they're interested in this calendar thing, but that's what they're interested in, some calendar. And there was a reason why they were, which I found out. But anyway, Dominic said to me, look, Steve, you're too controlling. You want to just do this your way, but you should be more open and sharing. And
Right.
I said, okay. So I said, Dominic, look, you're a genius and you do everything great and everything, money flows to you like nothing, and I'll do it your way. So we'll bring them in. They turned out to be so dastardly and so sneaky and so conniving, the people at Bloomsbury. And their whole plan was that they had talked to somebody at the, what's it called? The English version of the NEA?
I don't know.
It's like a big national funding agency.
Mm-hmm.
And they had spoken to somebody, said, look, we want to build a website that would be a calendar for all of Shakespeare 400 events for 1 year in England. And then the people said, oh, that would be great if you can do it. And they said, how much will it cost? They said, it'll cost £1 million to build a website.
So could we bring this to a close? Because
yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize.
That's all right. It's a lot of inside baseball
I'm
for
sorry.
people
I'm sorry. I
who
apologize.
tuned in to hear about A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Okay, well, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'll tell you another time.
It's all very interesting, but
It is interesting, but I'll tell you another time.
My role, yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
The topic focus.
No,
No,
I'm sorry.
thank you for the stories. It's actually quite fascinating.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. So back to the topic of A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Mhm.
Just maybe we can all chime in as we will about the play, our experiences with the play, either viewing it, performing in it, directing it, supporting it in whatever way. I'm going to steal the limelight for a moment, and hopefully this will work by playing a trailer that I created for our 2016 production at Racine Correctional Institution. It has some pretty vivid images. It's, just some quick shots from the production using good old iMovie software. And that might provoke some thoughts, and I'll probably
Okay.
say one or two things about our production after that. Christopher might as well, since I think he was there, and then I know he was there, and then we can just bounce around. So let's see if I can make this happen. Christopher, can you walk us into it as I find it? 2016, go.
Yes, I was just coming in. Sometimes I take my face off the screen because I want to listen to people more
Sure.
and not look. I'm looking at my own face and it freaks me out. So yes, so this one was, I think, one of the earlier ones that we did in the library after you were kicked out of the gym.
No, this is in the chapel.
I meant that. I just meant outside of, I always, the chapel / library, I think of is the same space. But it was the first one that we weren't in the gym with some higher production values. My old costumer there from Sleepy Lion Theater, there's a picture again from Sleepy Lion. She came out a couple of years and did some great costumes for the men too. So, but I really appreciated this one because it brought me back to, not brought me back to, but I felt I was experiencing better what Jonathan was doing with the men all the time before I came in, just a week before. So there was a lot of simplicity, purity to it, which I always love in performance. The simpler, the better with Shakespeare for me sometimes.
Sure. And I'll just say that, thank you for that. I'll just say that after 4 years of having our costumes hand built in Massachusetts by Cotton, the budgetary considerations and logistical considerations led to me pretty much ordering our costumes off of Amazon every year. And so what you see is kind of that. I hope the sound is okay. Maybe somebody can text me or message me if the sound doesn't come through. Did I just wreck it? Apparently I did. One more time.
It somehow jump skipped to the end. You want to do your full screen at the bottom of your YouTube page. There you go.
Here it is. Okay, one more time with feeling. I just want to say that a very large Native American man that you'll see in this video, his name is Avery. Just an amazing human being. I mean, all of these actors are just fascinating human beings. He's Native American and, like many of the guys there, maybe most hypermasculine. And he at first was hesitant to play the role of Titania, and he doubled as Titania and Hippolyta. But then took it on. He said, "Doc, mold me." And it was fascinating to see him warm into the role and begin to enjoy it. I just wanted to share that.
John?
Yeah.
Or you can roll tape, but I have a comment about that. I don't know if I
Sure.
should say it first or after, but that's one of my greatest memories of that, because I remember you had told me all of that before I came in, right? And then I'm just with the men for a couple of days and we're going, and the moment when he was holding, when he's holding bottom, I guess, yes? He was Titania. Like, there was something, oh yeah, that's what it was. That's what it was. When they woke up the next morning, when the stuff was coming off her eyes or something, he was spooning the other prisoner. And I remember starting to cry because it was gentle. It wasn't just a blocking move.
Yeah, it was nothing.
John told us we have to do this. So he was like that.
Yeah.
He pulled the other, he pulled the other actor into a spoon and they matched breath pattern. And it was one of the most beautiful things I've seen.
And the officers didn't say anything.
And the officers froze. They didn't laugh. They didn't do anything. They just stared and
Okay.
were touched. Yes.
Let's take a look. Yay. Just to say something, oh, stop, about the power of Shakespeare. This music, well, obviously, you know, look who was drawn into the room. This was young Lucius in our production of Titus Andronicus last week.
That's my favorite actor.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks.
Okay. So Isaac, we're live on YouTube. We're doing a chat about A Midsummer Night's Dream. Is that one of your favorite plays?
Yes.
Mhm.
You know, I didn't know we were live on YouTube. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So
I feel terrible.
Oh, no problem. I should have warned you when you came on. So, but you're fine. I mean, if you want me to take it down later, we'll talk. You know, I don't know if there's anything political or whatever. But back to Isaac for a moment. Isaac, do you remember we saw it at UW Parkside, a steampunk version of Midsummer Night's Dream? Did you see that one, Lisa? Yeah. Lisa, you're on mute.
Steampunk, was it directed by Rob?
Directed by Matt Schwader, who's a wonderful Wisconsin, Chicago actor who's now in Kansas City. But it was a very cool production, I thought. Interesting conceptually.
So let's talk A Midsummer Night's Dream. Productions, what we feel about the roles that we're playing on Saturday. I play Aegeus, and he's a cranky old father dude. I'm kind of growing into that role. So that's not too much of a stretch for me.
Hey, you can, am I still muted? No. You can check in with me because you only have a son. I have 2 daughters. So I'd like to talk to you in another thing, brother, about fathers and daughters.
Mm-hmm.
What the hell he's doing to his daughter, stinky bastard. Just since I just grabbed the screen quickly, I want to quickly apologize to everyone. I'm going to be checking out pretty soon. I'm doing an online music thing with people trading GarageBand tracks, and I already held them off. This is actually more interesting. Well, they're both interesting. This is a lot. I'd actually prefer to stay here. So that's unfortunate. But Lisa, maybe I can try to contact you tomorrow or something, because I had a couple things I just would love to bounce around with you.
Sure.
About, and I'll just plant the seed with you. So, you know, that Titania is just completely drugged, and that's all that's coming out of her. You know, she's just blinded. She's on acid, and she thinks, you know, the ass is wonderful or something. But I think there's a few more little threads in here that it's opening something in her of who she can see. And I don't know. I think
let's definitely try to talk about that. I would love to.
That would be a lot of fun. I'm going to listen in as long as I can, but when I have to tap out people again, I'm sorry. I'm so looking forward to Saturday.
Do you mean this reading by the Shakespeare in Prisons network of A Midsummer Night's Dream this Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern, live on YouTube?
Not our regular time. Don't be confused, people. And hey,
should be
John.
amazing. With Rob Pensalfini as Oberon and Steve Rowland. I'm so sorry. What role are you playing, or roles are you playing?
Wait a minute. Who's playing Oberon? Ricky Gervais? Who? I guarantee I'm not the first person that ever said that. So I don't take it back.
He is.
Really?
I take it as
way.
a compliment.
No
I take
way.
it as a compliment.
Steve, you are one of the mechanicals, aren't you?
Yes, I'm so happy.
Who
That's
are
really
you?
good.
Snug.
Snug.
Oh, the joiner.
Snug the joiner.
And Mike is Lysander. Lisa
Demetrius.
is Titania. Christopher is an ass.
I am an ass.
Bottom.
I'm an ass.
Ah,
I told John he cast me perfectly. A
Uh-huh.
director who doesn't usually act, that's who I am. I said, perfect. Give me the part of the person who thinks they can act. And I
I
can
just
make
asked
that.
myself,
Although
who's
Michael
really
told
hungry?
me-
Who's hungry?
My brilliant nephew, you know, made me feel better the other day. And he just said, you know, especially that part and the clowns, anyway, anytime you mess up, you know, it all still plays. So
If you can play it.
oh, you know I can be a confused.
It's a double-edged sword as a clown. If you really screw it up, it's okay, but you have to turn it into something. So you can screw up, but you still got to play it.
I'm either going to be fun on Saturday or crazy obnoxious, but I'm just swinging for the fences. I have nothing to lose.
You
I don't
should.
care.
You should.
I think you'll be just fine playing an ass.
Yeah. We want to see a bottom to really bottom out.
I can
God.
find.
That doesn't
I
sound
can
good,
find the
yeah.
bottom. Not only it's not its bottoms play because it does the bottom. I'm going into
Who's,
the sub.
who-
I'm going into the sub world.
If you could like, you know, look at the, you know, pantheon of actors that have played bottom, whose bottom are you trying to top?
I'm not anyone, and I'm actually purposefully not going back because I enjoyed it so much. The Kevin Kline one. I don't want it to hit me. Actually, all the, you know, I've looked back at a bunch of them, and subtlety is the key, and that's what I've always said to my actors with Shakespeare. I forget, I saw someone on Letterman or something many years ago, and they were like, hit your mark, say your words clearly. Shakespeare did all your work for you. I mean, you can go beyond that, obviously, and do what you want with it, but trust the language is there. It's going to take care of you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I've already
Again, I'm sorry. I'm going to, John, just say very quickly. And
Okay,
I
Bob, go
apologize. I'm
ahead.
taking up a lot of airtime here. Only because I might have to leave, but something I just want to throw this out to everyone for a future conversation. I had already mentioned earlier. So the first 3 of these that we did were all histories or tragedies. Okay. So any latency of being online is kind of okay because there's not a rhythm factor, but comedy is all about rhythm, and that's not going to be able to happen online. And the dry sound as we watch all of our favorite people online trying to do things, SNL to whatever, you're not, or stand-up comedians, you're not getting any feedback, you're not getting that rhythm or something. And I was just wondering, I don't know if it get too messy, and I'm willing to beta test this with anyone tomorrow if they want to. Go through one of the quick comedy sequences. What if all of the actors in the cast, you kill your video, so you're not going to be in the visual screen for everyone, but leave your mics on and laugh or clap or fall. I know, I see your face, Mike, and I know that's my worry too. But I'm just so worried about the quick comedy exchange. No, but if you heard something,
I'm less concerned with the audience reaction. I'm more concerned with what I noticed in the last few shows was that any given actor has a slightly different tech setup. You know, your computer might be a few years older than mine. You might be on a slightly older version of Zoom, this, that, or the other. and everybody's latency factor was variable. So, you know,
We're never going to get anything rhythmic of somebody cutting
the
somebody
rhythm,
else off.
I forget the audience laughing. It's the rhythm between the two or three.
No,
or
and
four
that's
people in the
ultimately
scene.
what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And now I'm definitely about to click off, John, but Lisa,
Yeah.
what did you just change? No, John, look at her. John, I because I have to do this to all of my students every day on Zoom, my public speaking students. So one of their things is exactly how you're framing. John, your lighting, you're being a goofball right now, but your lighting is great. You look great. Steve looks very good. We got Rob's book cover photo, so I can't comment on that. Mike, you're looking good. But anyway, Lisa, something just changed where everything is kind of blacked out, but it looks amazing, John. Look at her.
Yeah.
Wouldn't
I
that be
don't,
cool?
you know, I think it's just because I only have a light on in front of me and and I have a big picture window and it's getting dark. But
Well,
I feel like I'm in
whatever it
shadow.
is, it's actually a great look.
I
I'm
would
just
just ask
turn on
for,
another light.
I would ask for a little more front light
A
on
li-
that.
Well,
Yeah.
yes, all that. But I'm just saying the general framing is.
You look
so
like a
much-
bust in a museum.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? No, but then I just saw her hands. For me personally, how Lisa looks right now, actually all of you look really great right now, is so much better than a couple of the last performances of, there was a lot of actors like this with all the pictures and bookcases behind me and like this.
Yeah.
Romeo, wherefore thou? Oh, I want to stay with you guys. Hey, Rob, who's up over your right shoulder there? Is that your parents? Like your parents' wedding photo up there?
That's my parents when they were engaged in 1940.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Beautiful.
And what are the two little tiny pictures down in the corners then? Their children or?
That's them. No, that's them when they were like in their 70s.
Oh, that's beautiful, man.
Yeah, they're both gone.
I thought it would be nicer to comment that and then the bar behind you. And I was going to go, oh, I'll have
That's just part of my bar. I'm Australian.
All right. I look forward to seeing you guys on Saturday. Sorry that I got to run, but this has been oh my God, this has been so much fun. John, do these in the future.
Yeah. Good.
This
is
so
a good
much
dress
cleaner
rehearsal.
than the late night, because when we try to talk after the performance, everybody's fried, half the people are drunk, and this has been fun and informative. And
Yeah.
Lisa, I'll figure out a way to track you down tomorrow. Maybe we can chat a little bit. That would be
That
fun.
sounds great. That sounds
Awesome.
great. All right.
Good luck,
Bye.
Thank
Chris.
Nice to see you.
Bye.
Nice meeting you, Steve. I might just listen in to the very last
Sure.
second, but I won't.
Well,
Yeah,
you can
right.
always catch us on YouTube.
Oh, right. Oh, I'm
Mhm.
gonna do. Thank you. Good
You're
tip.
welcome.
All right. Love you all.
Bye.
Bye.
So Lisa, I just want to say you look marvelous.
I just
Whatever
turned
you
on a
did with your
different
lighting.
light. So
That's you.
Yeah. That
you got
is, everybody needs a dark window and a front light.
whatever you
what
got.
can I say?
I just got to come right back in. That's awesome. She looks
Yeah.
awesome.
It will be
Okay.
completely different at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, but I'll
And
do
then
my
Chris
best.
will come in every like 30 seconds or so because that's
Tell me to change my lighting.
okay. So we got Steve. There he is. So we got, oh my God. There he is. All right. So more on Midsummer. And if you can't come up with anything good, I have another clip to show. So watch out. Same production. But yeah. And also I have a clip from Steve's movie that he talked about, his documentary in progress, which might be a nice way to go later. You know, I don't know how long people can hang, but I got plenty of material. So I know, Lisa, you wanted to talk about COVID. Do you want to go there right now, or do you want to say something more about
Well,
Midsummer?
first, I wanted to say something about the fairy world. And I've been thinking about it a lot, thinking back, 30, 40, however many years ago, the production I directed was, and also just thinking about the play, obviously, because we're going to be doing this reading. And going on to what Rob was talking about, this sort of amoral quality of the fairies is really interesting to me. particularly Puck and Oberon. I mean, I see Titania as a character who is really in touch with nature, as the other fairies are, but particularly, I mean, she has all those wonderful speeches with Oberon. Jonathan, you are completely frozen in my screen. Are you still here? Yes.
What did I look like?
Beautiful, but frozen.
Okay, I'm back.
Just your cover photo.
Okay.
Oh, it was your, I see.
Oh, that one, yes.
Yeah. And I really love this idea of this dark world and this world of the fairies it's unclear. Is it illusion? Is it real? How does the world of the fairies impact the world of the court? And I just feel like there's so much meat in that whole idea, which is just exciting to me to explore.
Mm.
Yeah, we, in our production, you can hear me, yeah, even if you can't
Yes.
see me.
Okay.
Right. In our production, we took a little literally. I think does Oberon not refer to himself, or someone refers to him as King of Shadows?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we took that idea of shadow in the Jungian sense. And so we explored the, because we also did the double casting of Theseus and Hippolyta with Oberon and Titania, of the fairy world being the shadow world. So not immoral, but amoral. And it representing its manifestation of the deep unspoken.
Nice.
So interestingly, in the production that I did, I did not double cast those two roles. I saw them as very different, and really, but played along with that idea of a shadow world that is distinct, but that informs the world of the court, in both positive and negative ways.
Almost like the witches in Macbeth.
Very much like the witches in Macbeth, I would say.
So you did a production of Macbeth where the witches were omnipresent, right?
Yes, yes.
Did you do that with Midsummer?
The fairies were on much of the time, not all of the time, but the thing that I remember that was most exciting to me was at the end, when the fairies re-enter the world of the court. I think I should preface that by saying that a lot of things, the fairies were on stage much of the time and controlled much of the action. They moved sound, they moved lights, they froze actors and moved them physically through gesture and movement. And at the end of the play, when the fairies come in at the end of that wedding, they froze the action, and we went from this sort of happy, joyful celebration with music that reflected that to this music of the fairies that was much darker, more flowing but fleeting. And then when the fairies left, all but Puck, as the members of the court kind of awakened from this freeze, they kind of wandered off, wondering a little bit what happened, in the same way that Bottom does when he wakes up from his dream, or that Hermia is so discomforted when she wakes up. Sort of this idea of the dream is not always quite a pleasant dream, or we don't really know what's happened in that dream. We can't quite remember it, but it leaves us with this sense of discomfort. And I like that sort of ending of Puck reminding the audience, is this a dream? Is it real? What did you witness? What did you observe? I just think there's so much meat there to explore.
And I'll just chime in for the bright side of the play. The kind of straightforward reading of the play. The plays that I've done in prison, which are redemptive, The Tempest and A Midsummer Night's Dream being among them, are the ones that move me most deeply, I think, because of the setting. And so here you have three worlds, right? The aristocracy, the mechanicals, and the spirit world. And there's something about them being out of joint or rubbing against each other in difficult and problematic ways. And then this growth toward unification or harmony at the end. Just because we're so aware as a subtext, at least I was, of the strong divisions between prisoner and officer and staff and outsider and insider. And so to see that kind of joyous connecting and laughter and love joining people at the end of the play was irresistible as a force, I would say, in the room.
I think that's important regardless, that there
Yeah.
is that coming
Yeah.
together and that joy. I mean, the play is
Yeah.
about love,
Yeah.
but there are lots of kinds of love that are reflected in the play. You know, some of that love is dark. And I think that also speaks to the fact that, you know, it's not only what the play says, but what the play says at a particular moment in time to a particular audience, to a particular context, right? So my graduate thesis is at the Rand Theater is probably different than what you were trying to achieve.
Yes.
In the Racine.
So Lisa, I kind of off what you're saying, I'm struggling with the fact that Demetrius remains drugged at the end of the play.
Yeah.
That the only reason that you know, he's still in love with
Right.
Helena is because he is still drugged. So it's like this kind of the spirit world is still bleeding into the real world, or, you know, whatever. It's that darkness that it's not entire. So I guess, John, what I'm trying to get at is that I don't find it entirely. I mean, I see that it's redemptive in the sense that, oh, it's a big Shakespearean wedding at the end of a comedy, but I'm still conscious of the fact that I'm drugged at the end of this play.
And also, I think it's important that Titania is tricked into giving up that changeling child.
Yeah.
I mean, that's those two things, Lysander being drugged and Oberon winning by trickery, I think are important things in the play that are not to be ignored. They may not be, you know, the most important thing, but they're there.
True.
They leave us with some sense of discomfort, I think, or they can.
Yeah, they can, yeah.
I mean, unless it's a fun drug.
So maybe I can dare to try to show this video that reveals something of the inmates' experience, the prisoner's experience. I try not to use the word inmate. The prisoners, the imprisoned person's experience of performing in A Midsummer Night's Dream in Wisconsin in 2016. Let's see if I can pull that up real quick. So Mike, you've been at the Prison Project last year, right? What production did you see? Was it Measure for Measure?
He's muted. You're muted.
I see,
Mark.
you're muted, sir.
You're mute.
What's he saying?
Is he saying, and is he
Hello?
there?
Hello?
Is he there? Okay.
Sorry.
Mike, you took off and I had just asked you a question.
I'm sorry. I thought you were playing a video. I was just,
No.
I needed a bio break.
That's all right. I was trying to use you as a segue to the video. Now I think it's ready. So this is interviews with participants in the Shakespeare Prison Project in Wisconsin on their experience with A Midsummer Night's Dream. Hopefully it'll go. I need to go to share screen and then to, oh my gosh, it's a mess. I'll go to desktop. We'll see if this works.
Always risky to show your desktop.
I know, right? That's not what I was looking for. So you're seeing my desktop, right?
No, I'm seeing you.
Okay, I didn't share yet.
You did briefly, and now it's back to your video.
Okay. So once again with feeling, What am I trying to do? I'm trying to share screen. You can tell I'm a technical genius. Okay. There it is. Oh, there it is. There it is. Okay. You see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I am a Shakespearean actor. I tried to do something in high school, but I was just awkward. And I thought this was great because it gave me a platform to get to know people and be comfortable with who I am. And it was great knowing that other people were in the same boat, that they wanted to get to know other people and get comfortable with themselves. And it was nice to see what hidden talents I had. And I thought it was really fun to be able to express myself and to find ranges of emotion that I never knew I had. And I don't know, I'm glad it's here. I'm glad that we have this experience. And I'm thankful for the Parkside University. I'm thankful for this institution for allowing this. And yeah, this definitely changed me. And it made me more, I don't want to say assertive, but it made me more proud to be who I am, at the core of who I am. And I think that I love knowing these guys, and the fact that anybody can do this is pretty cool. Shakespeare posits a lot of strange interactions between a variety of different types of people. And I think by doing that, it sort of lays everything out there. There's really no experience that I don't think that Shakespeare hasn't addressed in some way, shape, or form, whether it's issues of jealousy or conceit or there's so many complexities to his stories, and I think to be able to act those out is very therapeutic.
Having gone through this class exposed me to another side of rehabilitation.
This play is all about relationships and building relationships.
Getting used to being around other people and seeing how they act towards people's feedback and decisions.
Over my course of my long stay in prison, I've been involved in quite a few programs, but none of them have ever taught me how to relate to people. And so now I'm learning how to relate with people.
A lot of this has been more about relationship building and developing tolerance, patience with other people and with myself.
Well, it's been a lot of learning about myself, first of all, because I'm playing the role of a woman, something that in the past I had always balked at and never thought I would do. The idea kind of horrified me, actually. But after considering it and deciding that I really needed to take a risk and step out of my comfort zone, I did that. And I've actually been learning a little bit about how to relate to that side of myself, because everyone does have a feminine side. And I've been learning a lot about how to get along with people.
Well, as we begin to read the play, and some ideas jump out there, but really seeing my other fellow actors, just really dig into them and listening to the way that they bounce the lines off one another. And it got me thinking a little more in depth. Like some aspects of the play, like it seems like Titania and Oberon had the power to sway or to will the events or future events that may have happened. They willed the wedding. They said, we're going to be there for the wedding. But yet, it didn't even come out of Theseus' mouth yet. So I was like, whoa, I didn't catch that until we was in the midst of acting the scenes. Read through the script, talked through them, but really hitting it then. Another one was Hermia, my character. And nowhere in the world, I got a love interest. And they gonna act crazy, and then we gonna wake up the next day, and I'm just gonna be okay with that. I wanna know what's going on. If we get married, will this happen a little later down the line in the future? What caused this?
The goal I originally started out with was to take advantage of the credits offered through the program. So that gets me close to my bachelor's degree. And I didn't expect much beyond that. Given the group is largely made up of people that I hadn't associated with before, I was surprised that the group came together fairly well.
I played Hippolyta and Titania in Shakespeare's play, Midsummer Night's Dream. I first came to this play thinking it was something else. I thought it was something to do with critical thinking. I thought it was a group where you would get some certificate, be taught to think differently see the world a better way, resolve your problems better. And it turned out to be Shakespeare. Well, my people, they like to question, you know, the people they meet, events, sightings, dreams. So I wondered if there was a greater reason why I came that day. And I sat through it, I listened, I thought about it, and I wanted to see if there was a greater reason. I wanted to see if there was more meaning and why it was that I found myself here at orientation that day. And so through the process, I've met different kinds of characters, people that I would normally not associate with or hang out with. But through Shakespeare and the way Doc Shailor teaches the class, the theater, I was able to get out of my comfort zone. I was able to view people better without coloring them with my discrimination, with my prejudice. It helped me to find my humanity, my true self. So it was everything that I thought it was, except for theater. And for that, I thank Doc and I thank Shakespeare for being the great playwright. And I'm glad I stayed and I'm glad I committed myself to it. Thank you.
Was the audio okay on that?
It was a little
was
soft, but it was okay.
A little soft? Yeah,
Good.
okay. I have to figure out, that's techie stuff, but switching from mic to internal sound. Mike, you can help me with that later, right? Okay,
Probably.
okay. So,
Those interviews are fabulous. I love
oh,
them.
thank you. And I've seen the interviews, some of the interviews that you've done, Steve, so I take that as a very high compliment. And maybe we can use this as an entry point to talking about, reflecting about what's going on right now with our guys and our women in who are incarcerated right now. I'll just begin sharing for Lisa and I by saying that I've been in touch with the education director at Racine Correctional Institution, and so far she says that there are no reported cases, but that could change, of course, on a daily basis. And
That's kind of a miracle.
yeah, I mean, well, and it's been a few days, so even over that time things could change. But we're working on a way of doing, as was one of our Shakespeare in Prison network folks, and a number of them have figured out ways to work through correspondence and video. Marin Shakespeare is doing that. So we're working on a correspondence kind of course to keep our guys connected, to keep connected with them.
Yeah. I'll just say something I have to check out as well.
Sure.
It's middle of the day here and all. So we were about a month into a 3 and a bit month program in the women's prison this year. And it was interesting, actually. We pulled the plug. Well, not pulled the plug, it's been postponed. Before, like the day before the prison actually made the decision, because the last few times we went in there, it was actually pretty clear that the women were a bit nervous about people coming in from the outside and walking around with their jumpers wrapped around their faces and stuff like this. And we, of course, our biggest concern was if the virus gets into a place like a prison, it's just going to I think that the prison authorities across the state, because all corrections is state matter in Australia, they were, and I read some things like this from other places in the world, their biggest concern was really about keeping the inmates occupied and making sure they had stuff to do. And so they were very late in coming to the party and saying, okay, no outside people coming in now. So we and the women actually made the decision when we eventually did to not keep coming in. It was the day before the prison said, okay, no more people coming in. So
do you remember the calendar date by any chance?
I want to say late March, late March, I think it was.
Ours was March 12, yeah.
Yeah, ours was a little after that. I think I had come back from, because I was in Tasmania just before everything got locked down. So it must have been a bit later than that. We are also preparing materials to send in and so forth. We can't do any internet stuff or anything like that. One of the tricky things there is literacy issues, because a lot of the people we work with are not highly literate. Some are functionally illiterate, which people express surprise, like, how are they going to do Shakespeare? It's like, you don't need to be able to read and write to speak Shakespeare. But at any rate, we're trying to keep something going. And of course, our thoughts are with the women in there. We don't have any direct correspondence with them, but we know we'll see them again eventually, hopefully later this year. In Australia, we're doing quite well compared to a lot of other countries in terms of the containment of the spread of the virus. There was one other thing I wanted to say, just on reflection on those interviews that you just showed, which was they were really reinforcing a lot of the stuff that was found in one of the few third-party research projects that was done on our work. Like, we do our own evaluations and the prison does some evaluations, but very occasionally we get a third-party independent evaluation. And there was one that was done in the framework of public health by a woman who's now got her doctorate in public health and so forth. But at the time she was a student and she had studied drama as well as public health. And she was looking at the social determinants of health and how the projects that we were running impacted on the social determinants of health. And she found in particular, and this was what was really reflected in what those men said, that there were two areas in which it was particularly beneficial in terms of, you know, the 7 or whatever social determinants of health. One was in terms of communication skills, particularly around affect. You know, so the ability to talk about emotions, which is something that you'd all know is not particularly encouraged or valued within the prison system, often by prisoners as well as the system itself. And the other one was the formation of positive social networks. So one of the men said it's really about relationships and building relationships. So those were the two big ones, the ability to use language to talk about emotion, and the formation of, yes, there's my book, the formation of positive social networks. And on that note, I'm going to have to leave you, and I will see you all in the wee hours of my Sunday morning.
Thank you, Rob. Wonderful. Appreciate it. See you soon.
See you.
Yeah. So, Lisa, you were recently in the Wisconsin prison. Your thoughts about where we were with the men at that point and having to leave?
It felt like we had, because we had such an interesting journey this year, moving from one project sort of morphing into something else, because of the people we were working with. It felt like we had just started to hit our stride and to really help them and ourselves to feel comfortable with where we were going and how we were pulling things together, and how the men were really sharing their experiences with Shakespeare's words in really pretty profound ways. And we had just kind of, seems to me the last night we were there, they had all shared where they were. So we got to hear all of their Shakespeare pieces, but also their writings about their connections to those pieces. And they were pretty rough, but it was like we had the beginning of something that was really starting to percolate. And then suddenly it stopped. And that you know, it was very hard for me. I assume it was very hard for them. They had invested a lot of themselves in it. So, and what's hard is just not knowing how they are, where they are, how they're thinking about this, you know, what
Yeah.
that loss means for them. Because as you know, we had people who kind of came in and out, people who had to leave the program for a couple of weeks and then very much wanted to come back, worked hard to get back in, which says a lot to me about how important the project was to them and the relationships that they had with one another, and particularly with you, I think, particularly those people who had been there for many years or several years. So you know, it's been hard for me wondering about them and wondering how they are doing and how they are missing this opportunity to share.
Yes. I'm hoping that there can be a two-way communication, because it's one thing for us to send materials in.
Right.
It's another thing for them to be able to send materials out.
Yeah.
To complete the circle of communication. And I don't know if that will be permitted, but we'll see. Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, this is inside information, but not that inside that it's not worth sharing, especially since some people from the Shakespeare in Prisons network may be watching. There will be a video conference on Monday. What is that, May 3rd? Something like that?
I think so.
May 4th. I don't have a calendar in front of me. Where the Shakespeare in Prisons network personnel will be convening to talk about the current state of affairs and to offer each other support and to see where we might go from here. So that'll be a good thing. So Steve and Mike, you've been listening a lot over the last bit, wondering what you're hearing and if there's anything you'd like to share or ask.
I mean, I will say that from the interviews that you played in that last clip, it's kind of a cliche, but it always comes up that the value in reading and performing Shakespeare and watching Shakespeare, because Shakespeare writes in such bold colors. You know, I mean, there are nuances, yes, but there are not, and there are lies and falsehoods, yes, but everything is still a bold color, linguistically, language-wise.
Everything's big, yes.
So when you hear Shakespeare's language, you are getting the boldest color of that kind of emotion from that kind of person that there is. And so what I hear a lot from your actors in those clips, and from when I was out there last year, or maybe it was the year before, it was last year, right? Last year. When I was out there and talked to your actors, is that the value in performing Shakespeare, you know, reading him, watching him, is engaging with the other. It's always about the other. It's always about stepping into somebody else's role, watching somebody else's role, reading, writing, just dealing somehow with somebody that's not you. And I feel like that's what I always get from your actors, you know, these guys who are in prison, who I'm making a huge, you know, generalization here, but it seems like maybe some of the reasons that the guys I've talked to are in prison have to do with, you know, maybe not always having understood the other. And that, like, in a very broad sense, you know, you could interpret that in so many different ways, but so many of the crimes we commit are because we don't understand or honor the other, right? And so I'm always struck by how much that word, even though it wasn't even said by any of the men in that interview necessarily, how that whole concept of the other always pops up to me, pops up in my mind when I think about Shakespeare, theater in general, but Shakespeare in particular, because what I said, you know, it's such bold colors. And then your work in that context where these men have to, and that last actor, sorry, I didn't catch his name, but he had that great stash. I'm not sure what his name was, but that guy, he, you know, he was talking very much to this point about, you know, this increase in empathy, this increase in empathy that he gained for his fellow inmates, for the people in the larger community, for maybe even for the people that were involved in his criminal activity. Like all of those circles, he gained that through engaging with, you know, being an other in the play, engaging with others in the play. I mean, it's just really all about that other. So anyway, that's really what I have to say. On a personal note, I will say you guys are talking on a much more professional, official level about all this. I'm just on a personal level super bummed because I was supposed to come out this year and see a show at Racine, and I'm super bummed because I had such an amazing time last year watching Measure for Measure, and I was really looking forward to it this year. So I mean, that's a small personal bummer, but important. You know,
yeah,
I was really looking forward to it.
We're all missing it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say about your comment about that last actor in the interviews, Avery is his name, played Hippolyta and Titania. He, one of the things that he did that year during our process, and it's always fascinating to see over a 9-month period, what happens not only as we engage with the text, but with each other. There was a very heavy conflict that went down. I'm not going to get into the details, but it involved several of the participants. And he very gently, but very strongly stepped into the role of mediator and almost guide and mentor for the whole group. And it was almost as if he had been waiting for that opportunity. So I think that, I'm not sure what that captures, but I wanted to share that with you. Well, and say also in terms of the other, which you mentioned, you know, one word they did use, they didn't talk about the other. Avery used the word empathy, was the word relationships kept coming up again and again. And to me, that's pretty powerful. And because it's a way of connecting with the other without othering the other.
Well, that's what I mean, a relationship is being in a relation, I being in a relationship with the other.
Right. It's about being connected with yourself and with the other person.
Right. But true othering is, and I think this is what you're talking about when you're talking about Avery being a mediator. True othering is where you're able to say, oh, I'm going to see it from your perspective, and I'm going to see it from your perspective, and I'm going to figure out where we're all going to meet in the middle here, you know? And that is like true othering. And you don't get that unless you have truly stepped into the persona of another character in some Shakespearean play, you know?
Absolutely. And unfortunately, there's an academic tradition using the word othering in absolutely the opposite sense that you're
I trust me, I was a comparative literature major, so I know.
Had to mark that for anybody listening.
Yes. No, this is acting. Yes.
Gotcha.
I thank you for Oh man, wow, yeah.
No problem. So Steve, what about you?
So let's see. Well, first of all, I'll start in the moment, which is that I've been teaching Shakespeare the last 5-6 years at Monroe Correctional Facility in Monroe, Washington.
Fantastic.
Which is just a little bit about an hour north of Seattle. And Sheila Kavanaugh, our colleague from Emory, has visited. She and I have been co-teaching a little bit, and we have writing exchanges, or we had writing exchanges between our students. Which was extremely powerful and extremely effective. And then Sheila would also come out and be a guest and teach. And that was not a performance class. It's a reading, talking about Shakespeare, trying to sort of do what Michael is talking about, which is this idea of how do you internalize these ideas and stories and conflicts and apply. In fact, I called the course, most of the times when I taught it, I called it Shakespeare and Me. So I was trying to get people to really sort of understand this. And one of the things that I've learned is that in the path of people's growth inside prisons, that what Michael was talking about is, it's very profound. It's like when people get to it, a very common thing is that people go into prison when they're young men, and when they do something really stupid, and they make a giant mistake, and often they're on drugs or whatever. And then a pattern is that they blame their crime on the other people, on the victim. You know, oh, that guy shouldn't have been wearing such a nice chain. I had to steal it from him. That was his fault for walking down the street on my side of the street, or what, you know, whatever. And then at a certain point, the person, if they're going through a period of growth, they start realizing what they did and how many people they impacted and how they hurt another person and another person's family. And that becomes a very difficult thing to absorb because people can't get over. You can't take it back. So part of that whole process of talking through and talking about Shakespeare, and then when you, the opportunity for people to read, like we read from the books, we don't perform, but we read, they get out of themselves and they have that opportunity to sort of be somebody else for 45 minutes or an hour or 2 hours in a classroom. So anyway, but Monroe is now completely shut down to visitors. There's no teaching going on there at all. There's no communication. I can't get in touch with any of the prisoners. We have no idea how long it's going to last. I didn't read in the news that there was a little uprising there in the prison because people were so pissed off about the way that they were being treated about the virus.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were, because the virus is spreading through there.
Oh,
so it's bad. It's bad news.
Yeah.
And
there's no social distancing in prisons. I mean, there's no way to do it.
There's no way to do it, and the guards are in danger too.
Oh, it's horrible for everybody.
Everybody's in danger. It's a terrible situation.
Yeah, I can't even. I mean, you know that it's been well documented that solitary confinement is a kind of torture. Psychologically, it's absolutely devastating. And this isn't exactly solitary confinement, but being in a prison and then on top of that, being confined to ever smaller spaces, say your cell, is really tough. Yeah, I don't know how they do it.
Yeah, I don't know how to do it either.
Yeah.
And
well, our hearts and prayers go out to all our incarcerated brothers and sisters, and all the staff and all of the corrections officials who are keeping these institutions running and who are themselves on the front lines. Thank you for your work. I hope we can see you on the inside again soon. And I hope that we can see the people watching this video this Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern for an amazing reading of A Midsummer Night's Dream with professionals from all over the world, people who work in prisons and who don't, people who are professional and amateur, just amazing human beings. And it'll be a very rich experience. So I hope we can see you. The place to find us is on this very YouTube channel. So you can bookmark it or just come back here. And there'll be plenty of notifications between now and then. So let's sign out.
Bye, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you, Lisa.
Nice to meet everyone.
Michael Obremski,
Bye, Michael.
Steve Rowland. Thank you, Christopher Shailor. Thank you, Rob Pensalfini. And we'll see you all on Saturday.